Number 8. Incident in Lethbridge. In 2020, an unnamed female employee at the Cocoa Vanilla Galactic Cantina in Lethbridge, Canada, took part in a promotion of May the 4th, a day informally dedicated to the Star Wars franchise, by dressing up as a stormtrooper. While struggling with pandemic-related restrictions, Brad Whalen, the woman's boss, had decided on the outfit as an attempt to boost up sales at the Star Wars-themed restaurant. The female worker wasn't a fan of the movies, but she happily donned a $1,200 costume. However, as she stood outside the pizzeria, ready to take photos with passers-by, someone called the police, mistakenly believing that the plastic blaster rifle she'd been holding was a real weapon. Local officers arrived at the scene, and the video of the ensuing confrontation was captured by a witness. Law enforcement approached her with their firearms drawn and ordered her to drop the rifle, which she promptly did. Because of the restrictive costume, the woman knelt but couldn't get flat on the ground as quickly as the officers had commanded her. She tried explaining the situation but was consequently pushed down and restrained, suffering minor injuries. The woman audibly sobbed through her plastic helmet while being handcuffed, and Whalen was heard telling officers that the weapon was plastic. The worker was released after the latter aspect was confirmed, and many subsequently expressed their support for her online, including actor William Shatner, who criticized the police's handling of the situation on Twitter. Number 7. Melissa Turner. Former cosplay model Melissa Turner was found guilty of second-degree murder in February of 2022 in connection to the 2019 death of her boyfriend, Matthew Trussler, at their home in Riverview, Florida. On October the 18th, a neighbor's surveillance system captured an argument between the two at around 4:30 a.m. Over 4 hours later, Turner called 911. When officers arrived at the home, they found that Trussler had been stabbed to death. Even though the 25-year-old also had a knife wound to his back, his girlfriend maintained that she'd acted in self-defense. According to her version of events, after a day and night of drinking, Trussler had choked her, thrown her across the kitchen counter, and then picked up a knife. Turner tried to take it from him by grabbing it on the blade and suffered a cut to her hand. After Trussler had allegedly put down the blade to resume strangling her, Turner picked it up and stabbed him. She later justified her actions by saying, "I thought he was going to kill me." In the audio captured by the neighbor's surveillance system starting at 4:32, a female voice suspected as Turner's was heard saying in sequence and several minutes apart, "You stay down, die," and "I hate you." At 4:45, she was heard saying, "What did I do?" hours before she called the emergency services. Her self-defense argument ultimately didn't hold weight in front of a jury, and in March of 2022, the former cosplayer was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Number 6. Oleg Sokolov. In November of 2019, leading Russian historian and scholar Oleg Sokolov was pulled from the freezing waters of the Moika River in St. Petersburg. The man, then in his early 60s, was found carrying a backpack that contained a weapon and a pair of severed human arms, which the authorities later discovered belonged to 24-year-old Anastasia Yashchenko. She'd been Sokolov's lover as well as his graduate student at St. Petersburg State University. More of her body parts were found at the historian's home, while a package with her torso was pulled from the river on November the 11th. Sokolov admitted to have gunned down and then dismembered his lover. He claimed that he'd shot her following an argument in which she'd allegedly tried to attack him with a knife. Other reports indicated that he'd shot Yashchenko 4 times in the head as she slept because the young woman had threatened to leave him after having grown weary of his controlling behavior. Sokolov was an expert on the Napoleonic era and a prominent figure on Russia's historical reenactment scene. A harrowing video of him and Yashchenko dancing together while at a cosplay function was shared by multiple media outlets reporting on the murder. Sokolov claimed that in the aftermath he wanted to get rid of his lover's body and then take his own life while dressed as Napoleon in front of the Peter and Paul fortress. There was further speculation that he'd also committed the murder and/or dismemberment while cosplaying as the historical leader. He was intoxicated when he went to dump the body parts and fell in the Moika, which consequently led to the murder's discovery. In the ensuing criminal investigation, Sokolov, clad in police-issued body armor and other protective equipment, was taken back to his luxury flat to reenact the murder for detectives. While there and in handcuffs, he tried to grab a Napoleonic sword in what his defense would later argue had been an attempt to end his life, but was promptly stopped by police officers. Ultimately, in December 2020, Sokolov was found guilty of intentional murder and sentenced to 12.5 years in a high-security prison. Number 5. Mary Ann Oliver Snow. On January the 17th of 2021, TikTok cosplayer Mary Ann Oliver Snow was drinking and smoking in the company of several friends at her home in Houston, Texas. The young woman had roughly 1.6 million followers on the social media platform, where she was known as Snow the Salt Queen, and had gained attention by costuming herself as characters from movies, video games, anime, or other media. At around 1 a.m., Oliver Snow and her friends were watching Gotham, a TV series set in the Batman universe. Oliver Snow then started playing with a Glock handgun in what was later reported as an attempt to emulate the villain Penguin, who also had a weapon in the episode they'd been watching. The cosplayer pointed the Glock at the head of 18-year-old Helen Rose Hastings, a friend and fellow TikTok cosplay influencer. According to 6 people who were at the residence, the latter told Oliver Snow to shoot and she replied, "Oh, okay," before pulling the trigger. A bullet then struck Hastings in the head. Oliver Snow and the others at the scene frantically scrambled to help the teenager and reportedly pressed a large stuffed teddy bear against her gunshot wound before calling 911. 2 days after she'd been rushed to a local hospital, Hastings' parents took her off life support and she passed away. In her interviews with the authorities, Oliver Snow reported that the gun had been left behind by an ex-boyfriend after he'd moved out and that the man had assured her he'd removed the bullets. Oliver Snow was arrested and charged with second-degree felony manslaughter but was released after a few days on a $20,000 bond and ordered not to leave the state. After a hiatus of several weeks, the cosplayer resumed posting content on her social media after rebranding as Yandere Freak. In anime culture, a yandere is a seemingly innocent love-struck character whose affection often turns violent. At least one of the videos featured fake blood splatter and violent themes. Many of her followers and others in the cosplay community found the content to be in poor taste considering Hastings' death and the charges against Oliver Snow. According to updates from November of 2021, the woman hadn't yet entered a plea but had deleted all her social media accounts after receiving repeated backlash. Number 4. Liu Ling. Popular Chinese cosplayer Liu Ling, who was better known by the nickname Jovi, was taking part in an underwater photo shoot on the western Pacific island of Saipan in the fall of 2017. With over 150,000 followers on her Weibo account, Liu was at the time one of the country's most beloved cosplayers. The woman from Hangzhou dressed up as fantasy or video game characters, but also drew inspiration for her costumes from Chinese history. On September the 25th, Liu was in a swimming pool at Saipan's Sea Fun Villa along with 2 other models. None of them reportedly knew how to swim and began experiencing difficulty upon drifting into the deeper end of the pool. All 3 women went down, but while the other 2 were rescued sooner, hotel staff pulled 25-year-old Liu from the water after roughly 3 minutes. She was taken to the hospital in a comatose state and pronounced dead 2 days later, much to the shock and heartbreak of her many fans who took to social media and paid their respects. Number 3. Mitch Tuhi. Australian man Mitch Tuhi from Ballarat was taking part in the reenactment of a battle at the Winterfest Sydney Medieval Fair in the summer of 2019. According to others participating in the event, 21-year-old Tuhi had been fighting with another man when a third combatant charged and struck him in the helmet with an axe. A witness reported that Tuhi's helmet bounced off his shoulder and knocked him out. His opponent continued hitting him until a referee intervened and the young man was taken off the field. At around 11 a.m., a rescue helicopter arrived at the scene and airlifted Tuhi to Westmead Hospital, where he was later pronounced as being in a stable condition. Stephen Slater, president of the Australian Medieval Combat Federation, later told a media outlet that much like with football or MMA, injuries may occur during mock battles. Medieval combat has been increasing in global popularity since the early 2010s. The International Medieval Combat Federation, founded in 2013, holds regular events to crowds of thousands. Combatants wear historically accurate armor and weapons, but the blades and tips are blunted to avoid injuries. Even so, concussions, cuts, bruises, sprains, and even fractures are not uncommon. Today's topic was requested by Sunset Assassin, Heath Nakase, and Bridget Digital. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Sula Ambrose. 25-year-old Sula Ambrose was training to become a priest at the Claretian Institute of Philosophy in Nkede, Nigeria, and on Good Friday 2022, he took part in a reenactment of Jesus Christ's crucifixion. Playing the role of Simon Peter, Ambrose donned a white toga for the reenactment, and the performance eventually reached a biblical scene in which Peter cuts a soldier's ear while trying to prevent Jesus' capture. Ambrose then suddenly collapsed, and members of the audience initially believed it was part of the performance. However, they soon realized he'd fallen violently ill after the young man started bleeding. He was first taken to a school hospital and then transferred to Federal Medical Center, where he passed away, but cause of death hasn't officially been established as of the latest updates on the matter. Number 1. Peter Allen. In 2007, Englishman Peter Allen was taking part in the reenactment of a medieval joust for the TV show Time Team on Channel 4. Allen, a former teacher, had traveled the country performing historical reenactments at schools and in shows, but neither he nor his unnamed opponent had any experience jousting. Nevertheless, the two mounted knights charged towards each other at Rockingham Castle in Northamptonshire. Their 7-foot lances were fitted with balsa wood tips designed to easily shatter upon making contact with their shields or armors. As the opposing jouster's lance impacted Allen's helmet, a splinter broke off and pierced his eye, coming to a rest 5 inches inside his head. The 54-year-old was airlifted to a hospital where he died a week later from cardiorespiratory failure and a severe brain injury. An inquest concluded in 2011 that his shield had been strapped inadequately to his arm and shoulder, failing to properly provide protection to his face. The eye slits on his helmet were too wide and designed in such a way that, unlike those on authentic armor heads from medieval times, they diverted oncoming objects towards the eyes. A coroner recorded a narrative verdict of the man's death, pointing to his jousting inexperience and equipment inadequacies as contributing factors. Allen's widow Sharon also took part in reenactments, and she attended the inquest while wearing a medieval cape and feathered hat. In an effort to offer her comfort, the coroner expressed confidence in the fact that Allen had met his untimely end while doing what he absolutely loved. His tragic death mirrored that of King Henry II of France. On June 30th of 1559, he was wounded during the joust when a shard broke from the lance of his opponent and entered his eye. A week and a half later, he succumbed to sepsis, subsequently leading to a palpable decrease in the popularity of jousting. Thanks for watching. Would you rather dress and act like your favorite fictional character for a month, or have someone else cosplay as yourself? Let us know in the comments section below.